The drill started at exactly 6:14 a.m. I'd been sitting in my armchair since 4 that morning, watching the windows slowly brighten from black to gray. The coffee in my cup had gone cold hours ago, but I kept holding it anyway. My hands needed something to do besides shake. I knew she would come after yesterday, after I'd finally handed them that eviction notice with trembling fingers. I knew Taylor wouldn't just accept it. That wasn't who she was. Taylor Morgan didn't accept anything that didn't go her way. "Mom, you can't do this," Riley had said yesterday afternoon, standing in my living room with the paper in his hands. My son, 42 years old, and he still couldn't look me in the eye when he was lying. "I can, and I have," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." Taylor had laughed, actually laughed, throwing her head back like I'd told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "You're insane. Riley grew up here. This is his house too. This house is in my name, only my name. It always has been." I'd kept my voice calm, but inside my heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. That's when Taylor's face had changed. The fake sweetness she'd been wearing like a mask for 8 months finally cracked, and I saw what was underneath. Pure rage. "We'll see about that," she'd said, grabbing her purse, her designer purse that cost more than I spent on groceries in 2 months. "Come on, Riley, we're not staying in this dump another minute." And my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone from the time he was 3 years old, had followed her out without a word, without even looking back. So, yes, I'd been expecting her to come back. I just hadn't expected the locksmiths. The sound of the drill cut through the pre-dawn quiet like a scream, high-pitched, metallic, angry. It was the sound of my home being violated, my sanctuary being broken into. I could hear Taylor's voice underneath it, sharp and triumphant. "The deadbolt first, then we'll worry about whatever other locks this paranoid old woman has." I stood up slowly. At 68, everything moves a little slower than it used to. My niece complained they always do these days, especially when it's cold. It was November, and the mornings in our neighborhood had started getting that sharp chill that promised winter was coming. I walked to the window and peered through the curtain, careful to stay hidden in the shadows. There she was. Taylor Morgan, 35 years old, dressed in designer workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, and even at 6 in the morning, her makeup was flawless. Foundation, mascara, that lip gloss she was always reapplying. She looked like she was going to brunch, not committing a crime. She was directing 2 men with a professional locksmith van parked at the curb. The logo on the side read, 24/7 Lock Solutions, fast, reliable service. One locksmith was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes that kept darting around the neighborhood. The other was older, gray-haired, probably in his 50s. He was the one holding the drill that was currently destroying my deadbolt. "Ma'am," the older locksmith was saying, his voice carrying in the still morning air. "Are you sure you have the right to enter this property? We usually require documentation that—" "I told you," Taylor snapped, cutting him off with a wave of her manicured hand. "My husband owns this house. His senile mother locked us out yesterday in one of her episodes. We have every right to get back in. Now stop wasting time and open the damn door." Senile. That word hit me like a slap across the face, but I didn't flinch. I'd been called worse in my life, much worse. When you're a single mother working 2 jobs to keep a roof over your child's head, you hear all kinds of things. Welfare mom? Deadbeat. Can't keep a man. I'd survived all of that. I could survive this too. I understand, ma'am, the older locksmith said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. But breaking into a property without clear ownership documentation could expose our company to liability. If you could just show me a deed or title with your name. My husband's name. Taylor corrected her voice, getting harder. And I don't have it on me. It's inside. Which is why we need to get inside. Are you going to help us or not? Because I'm paying you $250 for an emergency call-out and I expect results. $250. I almost laughed. That was more than I used to make in a week when Riley was little. When I was cleaning office buildings at night and watching other people's children during the day, trying to scrape together enough money to make the down payment on this house. I watched the older locksmith exchange a glance with his younger partner. The younger one shrugged clearly, wanting to just finish the job and leave. The older one sighed and went back to drilling. I let the curtain fall and walked to my bedroom. It was time. The canvas bag was exactly where I'd left it the night before, tucked in the back of my closet, behind the winter coats I didn't need yet. Inside were 4 large bottles of generic ketchup. I wasn't about to waste my good Heinz on this performance, and a small jar of concentrated red food coloring that I'd found in the back of my pantry. I'd bought that food coloring 3 years ago, planning to make a red velvet cake for Riley's 40th birthday. He'd always loved red velvet cake when he was a boy. I'd spent hours on that cake, measuring carefully, following the recipe exactly. It had come out dry and tasteless. Nothing like the bakery cakes I could never afford when he was growing up. Riley had eaten 1 slice and said it was fine. Taylor hadn't even tried it. She'd made some comment about carbs and wrinkled her nose. The cake had been a disaster. Today, the food coloring would be perfect. I carried everything to the kitchen and worked quickly. The drill was still going a constant metallic whine that set my teeth on edge and made my hands want to shake. But I couldn't let them shake, not now, not when everything depended on getting this right. I emptied all 4 bottles of ketchup into my largest mixing bowl, the ceramic one, with the blue flowers that I'd bought at a garage sale 20 years ago for 50 cents. The red was too bright, too obviously fake, like something from a cartoon. I added the food coloring drop by drop, stirring with a wooden spoon until the mixture darkened to a deep, convincing crimson. The color of real blood. The color that would make people gasp and call 911 and ask questions later. My hands were steady now. Funny how purpose can calm your nerves better than any pill. I pulled out old towels from the rag bin under the sink, towels so worn out they were barely holding together, towels I'd been meaning to throw away for months. I soaked them in the mixture one by one, watching the fabric absorb the red until it looked disturbingly, horrifyingly real. I grabbed the house coat I'd been planning to donate to Goodwill anyway, faded blue with flowers, the one I used to wear when Riley was little, and dumped more of the mixture over it until it looked like someone had bled all over it. Then I started creating the scene. The towels went first, scattered from the front door toward the living room like someone had been dragged fighting for their life. I poured more blood on the hardwood floor. The floor I'd refinished myself 10 years ago watching YouTube videos to learn how creating a trail that told a story. Splatter patterns on the wall. I'd watched enough crime shows over the years to know how blood spatter looked when someone was hurt badly. The house coat went near the door, crumpled and bloody like it had been torn off in a violent struggle. Every detail had to be perfect. Every detail had to tell the story I needed them to see. The drill sound changed pitch, becoming more aggressive, more violent. Wood was starting to splinter. They were almost through the deadbolt. I could hear Taylor's voice getting louder, more excited, more triumphant. "That's it. Keep going. We're almost in. I told you this would work." I took the bowl with the remaining mixture and went to the hallway, standing in front of the mirror that had hung there since 1991. The mirror that had reflected my face the day I moved in, younger, then still hopeful, still believing that hard work and sacrifice would be enough. The mirror that had watched me age, watched the lines deepen around my eyes and mouth, watched my hair turn from brown to gray. I looked at my reflection one more time. Then I took a deep breath and dumped the blood over my shoulders. It was cold, sticky, thicker than I'd expected. It ran down my arms in thick rivers, soaking into my old house dress, the comfortable one I wore around the house, the one Taylor had once called depressing. I smeared it on my face with both hands on my neck into my gray hair that I'd always kept short because long hair was impractical when you were working 2 jobs. The smell of tomatoes and metal from the food coloring filled my nose. It was overwhelming, almost making me gag, but I kept going. I had to make this convincing. I looked at my reflection again. I looked like someone had tried to kill me, like I'd been attacked, beaten, left for dead. Perfect. I heard the deadbolt give way with a sharp metallic snap that echoed through the house. Yes. Taylor's voice was pure triumph, pure victory. Finally, now open it. The handle turned. I heard it clearly from where I stood in the hallway. The door pushed in an inch, then stopped hard. The safety chain, the one Taylor had always mocked as paranoid. The one she'd said made the house look like I was living in fear, held firm. What? Taylor's frustration was immediate and sharp. What now? There's another lock. How many locks does one old woman need? "Ma'am," the older locksmith said, and I could hear the concern in his voice. "Now, that's a safety chain. We can't drill through that without damaging the door frame significantly. This is getting into serious property damage territory. I really think we should." "Then damage it." Taylor's voice had gone shrill. "I don't care, rip the whole frame out. If you have to, we're getting inside this house." "But ma'am, the property damage will be extensive and expensive to repair. Are you sure?" I said, "I'll pay for it. Stop questioning me and do your job. We're wasting time." The drill started again, and this time I could hear the anger in how it was being used. The bit bit into the wood around the chain mechanism with a harsh grinding sound. The whole door shuddered in its frame. My door, my home, being violated, torn apart by strangers who had no right to be here. I positioned myself carefully in the hallway, right where I'd be perfectly visible the moment the door opened. I knelt down on the floor, my knees screaming in protest, that sharp arthritis pain that was my constant companion these days, and arranged myself among the blood-soaked towels. I let my head hang forward, my hair falling around my face in sticky red streaked tangles that obscured my features. The drilling got louder. More wood began to splinter. I could hear pieces hitting the porch. They were seconds away from breaking through completely. I waited. Timing was everything now. The wood around the chain gave way with a crack. I heard Taylor gasp with excitement. In that exact moment, I reached up with one shaking hand, deliberately, shaking covered in red, trembling, just enough, and unlatched the safety chain myself. Then, in one smooth motion, I yanked the door open wide. The world stopped breathing. Taylor was frozen on my doorstep, her hand still raised to push the door. Her mouth fell open in a perfect awe of shock. Her eyes went so wide I could see white all around the blue irises. Her face went from triumphant pink to dead white in the space of a heartbeat. Behind her, the young locksmith dropped his toolbox. It hit the porch with a crash that sounded like an explosion in the sudden silence, tools scattering everywhere. A wrench rolled off the edge and landed in my flower bed. "Oh my God," he whispered, then louder, "Oh my God, oh my God." His voice was rising, getting higher, panicked. The older locksmith actually stumbled backward, his face going from professional concentration to horror so fast it would have been funny if this wasn't so serious. His drill hit the porch floor with a clatter. "What, Jesus Christ, what happened? What did we—" I looked up at them from my position on the floor, letting them see me fully. My face was a mask of red. My dress was soaked, dripping. The hallway behind me looked like a crime scene from a horror movie. Blood everywhere, towels scattered, that crumpled coat near the door. "You?" I let my voice come out weak, trembling, frightened, like a victim, like an old woman who'd just been terrorized. "You broke in? I tried to stop you. The drill. I was so scared." Taylor's scream shattered the morning silence like breaking glass. "Charlotte." "God, what did you do? What happened to you?" She was backing away, now her expensive designer sneakers slipping on the porch steps. One hand was over her mouth, the other was reaching out like she wanted to help, but was too terrified to get close. The young locksmith had scrambled backwards so fast he'd fallen, landing hard on the grass of my front lawn. He was crawling away on his hands and knees, leaving his tools behind his face, whiter than I'd ever seen anyone's face. We didn't touch her," he was shouting to no one and everyone. "I swear to God, we didn't go inside. We were just opening the door. We never touched her." Windows were opening up and down Maple Street. Doors cracked open. I could see Mr. Henderson directly across the way, standing on his porch in his bathrobe and slippers, clutching his cane with both hands. "What in the name of heaven?" his voice carried across the street. Charlotte Hayes, is that you? Are you all right? What's happened?" Mrs. Petrov, 3 houses down, was already on her phone. I could hear her voice carrying in the still morning air, high and frightened. "Yes, 911. I need police and an ambulance at 847 Maple Street immediately. I don't know what's happened, but there's blood everywhere. An elderly woman, she looks hurt badly." More neighbors were emerging now. The Martinez family from next door, Maria pulling a sweater over her nightgown, while her husband Carlos stood in the doorway looking shocked. Old Mr. Chen from the corner house walking closer despite his wife calling him back. The Johnsons, the Fredericks, the young couple whose names I could never remember, they were all coming out, drawn by the commotion, by the screaming, by the drill that had been loud enough to wake half the neighborhood. Taylor was shaking her head frantically, backing further away down my porch steps. No, this isn't. I didn't. She spun toward the locksmiths, her ponytail whipping around. You saw? You have to tell them. We didn't hurt her. She did this to herself. She's insane. She's trying to frame us. But the older locksmith was already moving toward his van, his face pale green now, like he might vomit. We need to leave, he said to his partner, right now. This is way beyond a simple lockout. This is criminal. Wait, Taylor grabbed his arm desperately. You can't just leave. Tell them the truth. Tell them I hired you. Tell them this is my house. The locksmith pulled his arm free roughly. Lady, he said, and his voice was hard now, all professionalism gone. That's exactly the problem. You hired us to break into a house you claim is yours, but that woman is covered in blood and we just drilled through her locks. Whether that's real blood or not, we're witnesses to a breaking and entering. We're not going down for this. But I paid you. Taylor's voice was getting desperate now, losing that confident edge. Keep the money, the older locksmith said. He was grabbing tools, throwing them into his box without organizing them. Consider it payment for the hell of a lawsuit we might be facing. Come on, Jake. The younger locksmith, Jake, was already at the van, still pale as milk. He climbed in without a word. The older one was right behind him. The engine roared to life. They were gone in less than 30 seconds, the van pulling away from the curb and disappearing around the corner like it had never been there. Like they could escape what they'd witnessed by driving fast enough. Taylor stood alone on my porch watching them go. Then she turned to me, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. Not anger, not manipulation, not the fake sweetness or the real rage, just fear. Pure animal fear of consequences she hadn't planned for. You did this, she whispered. You planned this. You set this whole thing up. You're framing me. I pushed myself up slowly from the floor using the wall for support. Every movement was careful, deliberate, painful. I wanted everyone watching to see how hard it was for me to stand, how weak I looked, how vulnerable. But when I raised my hands, they were clean, completely, spotlessly clean. I'd been so careful when I was spreading the blood to keep my palms clean. Framing you, que, I said, and now my voice was stronger, clearer. The voice of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Taylor, I don't have a scratch on me. Look, not a single injury. This, I gestured to my bloody clothes to the scene around me, is ketchup and red food coloring. I mixed it myself last night. But you just committed several crimes: breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, property damage, hiring contractors under false pretenses. And you did it in front of... I looked around at the gathering crowd, counting quickly. What, 15 witnesses, maybe more. The crowd had grown. At least 20 neighbors now clustered on the sidewalk, and in their yards, phones out, some recording video. In today's world, everyone films everything. I'd been counting on that. Sirens were approaching in the distance, getting louder. Mrs. Petrov's call had been fast. The police station was only 6 blocks away. Taylor's face crumpled like paper being crushed. She grabbed her phone from her pocket with shaking hands. Riley, she said, more to herself than to me. I need to call Riley. He'll explain. He'll fix this. Riley, I said quietly, using his real name instead of the nickname his father had given him before abandoning us. His name is Riley, and good luck with that call. I watched her dial with trembling fingers, watched her press the phone to her ear with desperate hope on her face. Watched that hope start to fade as it rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Riley. Leave a message." She pulled the phone away, stared at it like it had betrayed her, and dialed again. Ring, ring, ring. Voicemail, a third time, same result. By the fourth try, her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. "He's not answering," she whispered. "Why isn't he answering? He should be. Where is he?" But I knew where he was. I'd known since last night when I'd seen the truth in my son's eyes as he'd walked out my door behind his wife without looking back. Riley was good at many things. He'd graduated from college with honors, landed a good job in marketing, charmed everyone he met, but facing consequences. Standing up when things got hard. Those had never been his strengths. That was my fault, maybe, or his father's, or just who he was. 2 police cars pulled up to the curb lights, flashing red and blue in the pale morning light. 4 officers got out, and I recognized one of them immediately, Detective Sarah Chen. We'd served together on the Neighborhood Watch Committee for 5 years. She was sharp smart and didn't miss much. She took in the scene with quick, intelligent eyes. The blood covering me. The splintered doorframe wood scattered on the porch. Taylor, standing pale and shaking, phone still clutched in her hand. The locksmith's tools abandoned on the ground. The neighbors clustered everywhere with their phones out, recording everything. "Charlotte," Sarah said, walking toward me with measured steps, her hand resting near her service weapon like she'd been trained. "Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" I held up my clean hands, turning them so she could see both palms clearly. "I'm not hurt, Detective Chen. Not physically. This is ketchup and red food coloring. But my home has been broken into. My door has been damaged. And I have approximately," I looked around again, 20 witnesses who can verify exactly what happened here this morning. Sarah's eyebrow went up, just a fraction, barely noticeable, but I saw it. A flicker of impressed amusement crossed her face before the professional mask came back down, neutral and unreadable. "I see," she said slowly. She turned to her partner, a younger officer I didn't know. His name tag said Rodriguez. Officer Rodriguez checked the substance on Mrs. Hayes. "Carefully. Don't contaminate potential evidence." Rodriguez approached cautiously, like he was approaching a real crime scene. He knelt down, sniffed the red liquid on the towels, touched it carefully with one gloved finger, then brought it close to his face to examine. After a moment, he looked back at Sarah and shook his head. "Definitely ketchup, Detective. Heinz or generic, hard to tell. Some kind of food coloring mixed in to darken it." "Noted," Sarah said. Then she turned her full attention to Taylor, who was still standing on the porch like a statue. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Sarah Chen. Can you tell me your name and what you're doing at this property?" While Detective Chen questioned Taylor on my porch, while neighbors whispered and phones recorded everything, I stood in my bloody clothes and thought about the first time I'd seen this house. It was 1989. I was 32 years old with a 6-year-old son and exactly $8,473 in my savings account. I'd been saving for 6 years since Riley, no Elias, his father had named him. Elias was a baby. Since Marcos had walked out one Tuesday morning and never come back, every dollar in that account represented something I'd given up. A new coat saved $30. a movie with friends saved $10, a lunch that wasn't peanut butter and jelly saved $5. For 6 years, I'd lived on the absolute minimum, working 2 jobs, sleeping 5 hours a night, and saving everything else. $8,000 wasn't enough for a down payment, not even close, but I'd gone to the bank anyway. Mrs. Hayes, the loan officer, had said, looking at my application with barely concealed contempt, "Your income is insufficient for the amount you're requesting, and as a single mother with no assets." He'd let the sentence trail off like it explained everything. "I have a job," I'd said. "2 jobs. I've never missed a payment on anything. My credit is perfect." "But you're renting a studio apartment for $300 a month. The mortgage payments on a house would be significantly more. Plus property taxes, insurance, maintenance. I know the cost. I've calculated everything." He'd sighed like I was wasting his time. "Mrs. Hayes, frankly, I don't see how we could possibly approve this. You're a credit risk. Single mother, 2 low-wage jobs, no husband, no family, support system that you've listed." I'd wanted to cry. I'd wanted to scream. Instead, I'd said, "What if I could save more for a bigger down payment? You'd need at least 20% on a house in your price range that's $15,000 to $20,000. $20,000. It had seemed impossible, but I'd nodded and left that bank with my head up. It took me another 2 years. 2 more years of barely sleeping, barely eating, wearing clothes from thrift stores and cutting Riley's hair myself because barbershops cost money. 2 more years of other mothers at Riley's school looking at me with pity because I couldn't afford the school fundraiser, bake sale, or the class field trips. But in 1991, I walked back into that bank with $22,000 in my account. The same loan officer had looked at my application and blinked. "How did you—" "I saved it." I'd said simply. He'd approved the loan. The house I'd found was small, all needed work. The previous owners had let it fall into disrepair. The porch sagged. The paint was peeling. The yard was overgrown. But it was in a good neighborhood with good schools, and it was within my budget. I'd brought Riley to see it before we made an offer. He was 8 years old, small for his age, with my brown hair and his father's blue eyes. "Is this ours, Mommy?" he'd asked, running from room to room in the empty house. "Not yet, baby, but it could be." "Can I have the room with the window?" He'd been standing in what would become his bedroom, sunlight streaming through the dirty glass. "And that can be your room," I'd promised him. "All yours." We'd moved in June 1991. I remembered that day so clearly. I didn't have money for professional movers, so I'd borrowed Mr. Henderson's truck. He was younger, then stronger. He'd help me load our few possessions. Everything we owned fit in one pickup truck. A mattress, a couch from Goodwill, a kitchen table I'd bought at a garage sale, a box of dishes, Riley's toys, my clothes. That was it. That was everything we had in the world. But when I'd carried Riley over the threshold, he'd insisted I carry him like in the movies and set him down in our living room. I'd known it was worth it. "We're home," I told him. "Home," he'd repeated, trying out the word. Then he'd smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. "Our home." "Our home," I'd agreed. That night, after Riley was asleep in his new room with his window, I'd sat in that living room on that second-hand couch and cried. Not sad tears, happy tears, relieved tears, exhausted tears. After 8 years of struggling, of barely surviving, of wondering if I'd ever give my son anything better than a studio apartment and peanut butter sandwiches, I'd done it. I'd bought us a home. The mortgage was $643 a month. For the first year, I had to choose between groceries and electricity some weeks. I rationed my blood pressure medication because I couldn't afford both the pills and the water bill. I wore shoes with holes in them because new shoes cost money Riley needed for school supplies. But I never missed a mortgage payment, not once in 35 years. I'd paid off that mortgage in 2011. It had taken 20 years, but I'd done it. The day I made that final payment, Riley was 28 years old, had a good job, lived in his own apartment across town. I'd called him to tell him. "Mom, that's great," he'd said, distracted. I could hear traffic in the background. He was driving somewhere. "Listen, I'm heading into a meeting. Can I call you back?" He hadn't called back, but I'd sat in this house, my house fully mine. Now, no bank owning any part of it, and felt that same overwhelming relief I'd felt the day we moved in. I'd done it. Against all odds, despite everything I'd done it, Mrs. Hayes. Detective Chen's voice brought me back to the present. I was still standing in my bloody clothes in my doorway. Taylor was sitting on my porch steps now, her face in her hands. Officer Rodriguez was taking statements from neighbors. "Yes, detective. I need to ask you some questions about what happened here this morning." "Of course." I stepped aside. "Would you like to come in?" "Actually, I'd prefer if we stayed out here for now. This is still an active scene." She pulled out a small notebook. "Can you tell me in your own words what happened?" So I told her. I told her about giving Riley and Taylor the eviction notice yesterday. I told her about Taylor's threats. I told her about hearing the drill this morning, about creating the fake crime scene, about opening the door. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she looked at me for a long moment. "That's quite a plan," she said finally. "The ketchup was clever. I'm 68 years old, detective. I've learned a few things about survival." "I can see that." She glanced at Taylor, who was still sitting on the steps, still trying to call Riley. "Mrs. Hayes, do you have proof that this property belongs solely to you?" "I do. The deed, the mortgage records, they're all inside. I can get them right now." "Please do." I walked back into my house, my bloody footprints tracking across the floor I'd mopped 3 days ago, and went to the antique writing desk where I kept all my important documents. The deed was right on top where I'd placed it last night. I'd known I'd need it. When I came back out, I handed the folder to Sarah. She opened it, carefully examined each document. The deed showing Charlotte Marie Hayes as the sole owner, purchased in 1991. The mortgage satisfaction letter from 2011. The property tax receipts, all paid in full, all in my name only. "This all appears to be in order," Sarah said after several minutes. She looked at Taylor. "Ma'am, I need you to stand up, please." Taylor looked up, mascara running down her face. For all her perfect makeup, she looked terrible now. "What?" "Stand up. I need to ask you some questions." Taylor stood shakily. "I want my husband. Where's Riley? He should be here." "I'm not concerned with where your husband is right now. I'm concerned with your actions this morning. Did you hire those locksmiths to force entry into this property?" "This is my house," Taylor said, but her voice was weak now, uncertain. "Is your name on the deed to this property?" "My husband grew up here. His mother—" "That's not what I asked," Sarah interrupted firmly. Is your name or your husband's name on the deed to this property? No, but. Then you don't have legal ownership, and the homeowner, Mrs. Hayes, served you with an eviction notice yesterday, correct? She can't just kick us out. We live here as guests of the property owner, yes. Guests who were asked to leave. Instead of complying with that legal notice, you returned this morning with contractors and forced entry into the property. That's breaking and entering at minimum, Mrs. Morgan. Taylor's face crumpled. She looked around at all the neighbors watching all the phones recording, at the splintered door frame, at me standing there in my bloody clothes with completely clean hands. She'd realized finally that she'd lost. I want a lawyer, she whispered. That's your right, Sarah said. Officer Rodriguez. Yes, ma'am. Get Mrs. Morgan's full information. We'll be filing a report for breaking and entering, trespassing, and property damage. Mrs. Morgan, you're not under arrest at this time, but I strongly suggest you don't leave the state. Taylor just nodded, all the fight gone out of her. Sarah turned back to me. Mrs. Hayes, I'll need you to come down to the station this afternoon to give a formal statement. And you should document all the damage to your door, take photos, get repair estimates. You may need them if you decide to press charges. I understand. Thank you, Detective. She smiled, just slightly, just for a moment. The ketchup really was clever, dramatic but effective. Though next time, maybe just call 911 first. Next time, I said, I hope there won't be a next time. Let's hope not. She looked at the growing crowd of neighbors. All right, everyone, show's over. Please return to your homes. Mrs. Hayes needs privacy to deal with this situation. Slowly, reluctantly, the crowd began to disperse, but I could hear them talking, spreading the story. By noon, everyone in the neighborhood would know what happened. By tonight, it would probably be on local news. Woman defends home with fake blood. I didn't care. Let them talk. I defended my home. That was what mattered. Mr. Henderson was the last to leave. He walked over carefully, leaning heavily on his cane. Charlotte, he said quietly, that was quite a show. I did what I had to do, William. I know you did, and for what it's worth, I've never liked that daughter-in-law of yours. Too entitled, thought she was better than everyone. He patted my shoulder. You need anything, you call me, day or night. Thank you, I will. He nodded and shuffled back across the street to his house. I watched Officer Rodriguez finish taking Taylor's information, watched her try one more time to call Riley, watched her face when he didn't answer again. Mrs. Morgan, Rodriguez said, do you have somewhere to go? You can't stay at this property. My sister, in New Jersey, I can call her. Please do that and make sure Detective Chen has your contact information. Taylor nodded numbly. She looked at me one more time. This isn't over, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice anymore. Yes, I said quietly, it is. She walked to her car, a BMW that Riley had leased 2 months after moving in here. I'd later learned using my credit card information, and drove away. The police left shortly after. The neighbors went inside. The street returned to its normal quiet Sunday morning emptiness. I stood alone on my porch, looking at my splintered door frame, my bloody footprints, the mess I'd created. My home, still my home. I walked back inside and closed the broken door as best I could. I spent the rest of Sunday cleaning up the mess I'd made. It was harder than I'd expected. Ketchup is sticky and the food coloring had stained some of my floor. I scrubbed for hours, my knees aching, my back complaining, but eventually the house was clean again. While I cleaned, I thought about how it had started. How 8 months ago in March, Riley had shown up at my door. It had been a Tuesday evening. I just finished dinner, chicken and rice enough for one, when the doorbell rang. I'd opened it to find my son standing there with 2 suitcases and a face full of misery. "Mom," he'd said, "can we come in?" Taylor had been standing behind him, silent for once, her face carefully blank. "Of course," I'd said immediately. "What's wrong? What happened?" We'd sat in the living room, this same living room I was now cleaning ketchup out of, and Riley had told me a story. He'd been laid off from his marketing job. Budget cuts, nothing personal. They'd given him 2 weeks severance. He and Taylor needed a place to stay while they figured things out. Just temporarily. A week, maybe 2. "Of course you can stay," I'd said without hesitation. "This is your home. It'll always be your home when you need it." Riley had hugged me. "Thanks, Mom. I knew we could count on you." That first week, they'd been model house guests. Taylor had cooked dinner twice. Riley had fixed the leaky faucet in my bathroom. They'd been quiet, respectful, helpful. The second week, small things started to change. Taylor began rearranging the kitchen. "It's more efficient this way," she'd said. I'd come home from my part-time job at the library. I'd retired from my cleaning jobs at 65, but couldn't survive on Social Security alone to find all my cabinets reorganized. Things I'd kept in certain places for 30 years were suddenly somewhere else. "I hope you don't mind," Taylor had said, smiling. "I noticed you were having trouble reaching some of the higher shelves. I put everything you use regularly down lower." It had seemed thoughtful at the time. The third week, Marcos's armchair disappeared. I'd come home to find it gone, just gone. In its place was a modern chair from IKEA, all sharp angles and uncomfortable fabric. "Where's the armchair?" I'd asked Riley. "Oh," he'd looked uncomfortable. "Taylor thought it was pretty worn out. She donated it. This new one is much better, right?" That armchair had been Marcos's before he left. It was one of the few things I'd kept from our marriage. Not because I missed him, I didn't nod anymore, but because Riley used to sit in it as a boy, reading his books, doing his homework. It had memories. "You should have asked me," I'd said quietly. "Mom, it was falling apart. This one is better. You'll get used to it." But I never did get used to it. That new chair was uncomfortable and cold. It wasn't mine. By week 4, Taylor had stopped being polite about my cooking. "Is this really how you season chicken, Mom Hayes?" she'd asked one evening, wrinkling her nose at the dinner I'd made. No wonder Riley never wanted to cook when we first got married. He didn't know what real food tasted like. Riley had laughed. Actually laughed at his wife insulting my cooking. I'd put down my fork. "If you don't like my food, you're welcome to cook your own." "Oh, I didn't mean to offend you," Taylor had said, but she'd been smiling. "I'm just saying there are better ways to prepare chicken. I could teach you if you want." Teach me. She wanted to teach me how to cook in my own kitchen after I'd been feeding myself and my son for 40 years. Week 6, I'd found them going through my financial papers. I'd come home early. From the library, there'd been a gas leak. We'd all been sent home and found them at my writing desk. Taylor had been holding my bank statements. Riley had my checkbook. "What are you doing?" I'd asked, and I hadn't been able to keep the anger out of my voice. "Mom, We need to talk, Riley had said, looking guilty. About your finances. My finances are none of your business. You're not getting any younger, Taylor had said, not looking guilty at all. Someone needs to make sure you're managing your money properly. You could develop dementia, forget to pay bills. I'm 68, not 98, and my mind is perfectly fine. Of course it is, Riley had said quickly. Taylor didn't mean we're just worried about you. Living here alone, getting older. What if something happened? Then I'd deal with it, like I've dealt with everything else in my life. But they'd kept pressing. Maybe I should consider a power of attorney just in case. Maybe Riley should be on my bank accounts just for emergencies. Maybe we should talk about what would happen to the house when I was gone. I'd refused everything. And that's when Taylor had started getting nasty. Week 8. I'd discovered the credit card. I'd gotten a bill in the mail from a credit card company I'd never used. Capital One, $15,000 in charges. The card had been opened in February, 1 month before Riley lost his job. My name was on the application, my social security number, my address, but I'd never applied for that card. I'd called the number on the bill, my hands shaking so hard I could barely dial. The customer service representative had been sympathetic but clear. The card had been opened with all my correct information. The charges were from March through June, furniture stores, restaurants, a car lease payment, Taylor's favorite boutique. Do you want to dispute these charges, ma'am? I need to think about it. Can you send me copies of all the receipts? They'd send them. I'd gone through every single one. $47,328.16. Every purchase signed with a signature that looked almost like mine, but wasn't quite right. Riley had stolen my identity. My son had committed fraud against me. When I'd confronted him, showing him the bills, the receipts, demanding to know what he'd done, he'd cried. Mom, I'm sorry. I was desperate. We were drowning in debt. I was going to pay you back, I swear. As soon as I found another job. You told me you lost your job. When did you actually lose it, Riley? He'd looked away. February. And Taylor, does she know about this? She suggested it, but it was my decision. I signed the papers. Taylor had walked in then. What's going on? You used my information to open a credit card. I'd said, my voice surprisingly steady. You committed identity theft and fraud. Oh, please. Taylor had rolled her eyes. You act like we stole from you. We're family. That money would have been Riley's eventually anyway. We just needed it now. That money is mine. I earned it. And you stole it. We borrowed it, Taylor had corrected. There's a difference. That's when I'd known they had to leave. That's when I'd called my lawyer James and asked him to draw up an eviction notice. And that's when everything had escalated to this morning to locksmiths and fake blood and police. I finished cleaning the last of the ketchup off my floor and sat back on my heels. My knees were screaming, my back felt like it might never straighten again. But my house was clean. My house? Mine? My phone rang. I pulled it from my pocket and looked at the screen. Riley. Finally, after ignoring Taylor's calls all morning, my son was calling me. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Hello, Riley. Mom. His voice was tight-strained. I heard what happened. Taylor called me. She said you staged a fake crime scene with ketchup. Yes. Mom, that's crazy. You could have just called the police. You didn't need to what? To protect my home. to make sure everyone saw exactly what Taylor was doing. She said the locksmiths thought she was dying. She said there were police and neighbors, and Mom, this is going to be all over the news. Good, let everyone see what happens when someone tries to break into my home. It's not just your home, I grew up there. I have rights. You have no rights, I interrupted, and my voice was cold now. Your name is not on the deed. You are not on the mortgage. You were a guest in my home, and now you're not welcome anymore. Silence on the other end. Then, where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Mom, please, I'm sorry about the credit card. I'll pay you back every cent, I promise. Where are you, Riley? More silence. Then quietly, California. Uncle Dennis's place. Uncle Dennis, my late brother who'd moved to San Diego 15 years ago. You left Taylor to break into my house while you ran away to California. I didn't know she was going to do that. I told her to wait to give you time to cool down. Liar. The word came out harsh sharp. You knew exactly what she'd do. That's why you left. Mom, do you know what you've done, Riley? To me, to yourself, to your marriage? Do you have any idea? I know I messed up. But Mom, there's something else. Something I need to tell you. I waited. Taylor's pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually sat down on my floor right there in the kitchen, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. What? She's pregnant, 3 months, she doesn't know that I know. I found the test, but Mom, I can't bring a baby into this mess. I can't be a father. Not like this. Not when everything is falling apart. A baby, a grandchild, my grandchild, growing inside Taylor, who I just had arrested for breaking and entering. Does she know you know? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No, I found the test hidden in her makeup bag. She hasn't told me. Are you coming back? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. I closed my eyes. 42 years ago, I'd held my newborn son in my arms and promised I'd always protect him. I'd promised I'd give him everything I never had. I'd promised I'd make his life better than mine. And now, here we were. Him hiding in California. His wife pregnant and facing criminal charges. His mother sitting on the kitchen floor covered in dried ketchup. Riley, I said quietly, you need to figure out who you want to be. The man who runs away or the man who faces what he's done. I don't know how to be that second man, Mom. Neither did I. But I learned. Because I had to. Because you needed me to. I'm not as strong as you. You could be, if you chose to be. He was crying now. I could hear it in his voice. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for everything. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. What do I do? I thought about that question for a long time. What should he do? What should I tell him? Finally I said, come home, not here. You're not welcome here anymore. But come back to this state. Face what you've done. Talk to Taylor. Talk to the police. Talk to a lawyer. Be a man, Riley. For once in your life, be a man. And if I do that, will you forgive me? Would I forgive him? Could I forgive him for the theft, the lies, the betrayal? I don't know, I said honestly, but I know I'll never forgive you if you keep running. We sat in silence for a moment, 3,000 miles apart, connected only by a phone line and 42 years of history. "I'll think about it," he finally said. "You do that. And Riley? Yeah. That baby, my grandchild, deserves better than parents who steal and run away. Whatever you decide, think about that child. Think about what kind of father you want to be." I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried. Not the angry tears from this morning or the relief tears from yesterday. These were sad tears, grief tears, mourning tears for the relationship with my son that maybe had never been what I thought it was. But even through the tears, I knew one thing for certain. This house was mine. This home was mine. And no one, not Taylor, not Riley, not anyone was going to take it from me. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, bled too long for this place. It was mine, and I was keeping it. Monday morning came too soon. I hadn't slept well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Riley as a little boy running through this house with his arms spread like airplane wings. I saw him at 8 years old helping me paint his bedroom blue because that was his favorite color. I saw him at 16 studying at the kitchen table for his SATs, determined to get a scholarship so I wouldn't have to pay for college. Where had that boy gone? When had he turned into a man who could steal from his own mother? The doorbell rang at 8 a.m. sharp. I'd been expecting it. I looked through the peephole and saw a man in his 50s wearing work clothes and carrying a toolbox. I opened the door carefully because the chain was still broken. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm Tom Brennan from Brennan Home Repairs. Detective Chen said you needed emergency door work." "Yes, please come in." Tom walked in and whistled low when he saw the damage. The splintered frame, the destroyed deadbolt, the broken chain mechanism. "Whoever did this really wanted to get in." "They certainly did." He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. "For insurance purposes, you'll want documentation. This is going to run you about $800 for parts and labor. I can have it done by this afternoon if you want." $800. That was a week's worth of groceries, but I needed my home secure again. "Please do it. How soon can you start?" "Right now if that works for you." "Perfect." While Tom worked on my door, I made coffee and tried to decide what to do next. The credit card fraud, that was the big question. If I reported it officially, Riley could go to prison, federal prison. Identity theft over $40,000 was a serious felony. But if I didn't report it, that debt became mine. $47,000 at my age with my fixed income, that would destroy me. I'd have to sell the house just to pay it off. The house I'd spent 35 years fighting for. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Chen. "Can you come to the station at 2 p.m.? Need to discuss the credit card situation. Bring all documentation." I texted back. "I'll be there." Another buzz. This one from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Taylor. Please, I need to talk to you. It's important about the baby." So Riley had told her that he'd told me. Or maybe she'd decided to tell me herself. Either way, the secret was out. I didn't respond. A third buzz. James, my lawyer. "Charlotte, I heard about Sunday morning. Are you all right? Call me when you can." I called him. James had been my lawyer for 15 years, ever since I'd needed help with a dispute over property taxes. He was honest, competent, and most importantly, he didn't charge me more than I could afford. "James, it's Charlotte. Charlotte, I heard through the grapevine that there was quite a scene at your house yesterday. Police fake blood, the works." The grapevine works fast. It's a small town. Are you okay? I'm fine. Tired but fine. The door is being repaired as we speak. Good. Now, about the credit card fraud. Have you decided what you want to do? I looked out my window at the street I'd lived on for 33 years. Mr. Henderson was getting his newspaper. Miss Petrov was watering her flowers. Normal life continuing like nothing had happened. I don't know, James. If I report it, Riley goes to prison. If I don't, I lose everything. There might be a middle option. What do you mean? You could report the fraud but request leniency. Argue that Riley should be sentenced to restitution and probation instead of prison time. Given that he's a first-time offender and it's family-related, a judge might be sympathetic. Restitution means he has to pay it back. Yes, every cent plus interest and penalties. It would probably take him years, but he wouldn't go to prison. Years. Riley would spend years paying back the money he'd stolen from me. He'd have to get a job, keep it, make regular payments. He'd have to grow up. What if he doesn't pay? What if he runs again? Then the court can revoke his probation and he goes to prison anyway. It would be motivation for him to stay on track. I thought about the baby, my grandchild, growing up with a father in prison or growing up with a father who was working hard to make things right. Which would be better? I need to think about it. Of course. But Charlotte, you need to decide soon. The bank is going to want an answer, and the longer you wait, the harder this gets. I know. Thank you, James. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and did what I always did when I needed to think clearly. I made a list. Option 1. Report the fraud, fully pursue criminal charges. Pro-justice. Riley faces real consequences. Pro, I don't pay the debt. Con. Riley goes to prison for 3 to 5 years. Con, the baby grows up without a father. Con, I lose my son, probably forever. Option 2, don't report, pay the debt myself. Pro, Riley doesn't go to prison. Pro, maybe he learns without legal consequences. Con, I lose $47,000. Con, might have to sell my house. Con, Elaine Dicker learns he can steal without real punishment. Option 3. Port with request for a restitution. Probation. Pro Riley faces consequences but not prison. Pro, he has to pay back every cent. Pro, it's a chance for him to prove himself. Con, he might fail and go to prison anyway. Con, it takes years and I'm not getting younger. I stared at that list for a long time. Tom's voice interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Hayes, I'm all done here. Want to see? I went to the door. It looked perfect. New frame, new deadbolt, new chain, even a new peephole. You couldn't even tell it had been damaged. It's beautiful, Tom. Thank you. I also added a reinforced strike plate. That's the metal part the bolt goes into. It'll take a lot more than a drill to get through this now. And see this? He showed me a small device next to the doorbell. That's a video doorbell. No charge, I had an extra one. Now you can see who's at your door before you open it. That's very kind of you. Detective Chen's a friend. She told me what happened, what your daughter-in-law did. He shook his head. I've got 3 daughters myself. Can't imagine any of them treating their mother-in-law like that. You did right, standing up for yourself. After Tom left, I wrote him a check for $800. and thanked him again. I got ready to go to the police station. I put on my good pants, the black ones I wore to church, a nice blouse, my comfortable shoes. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. I looked old. When had I gotten so old? I was 68. My mother had died at 72. I probably didn't have many years left. Did I want to spend them fighting with my son? Or did I want to find some way forward, some way to salvage what was left of our relationship? But then I thought about those 8 months. The disrespect, the insults, the way Taylor had treated me like I was nothing, the way Riley had let her, the way he'd stolen from me. No, I couldn't just let it go. That wouldn't be forgiveness. That would be foolishness. The police station was a 15-minute drive from my house. I'd only been there a few times before, once to report a stolen bicycle when Riley was 12 once, for a neighborhood watch meeting once, when Miss Petrov thought she saw a burglar, but it turned out to be her own son coming home late. Detective Chen met me in the lobby. "Charlotte, thanks for coming. Let's talk in my office." Her office was small but organized. Neat stacks of files, a computer, a coffee maker in the corner. On her desk was a photo of her with 2 teenage kids, both smiling. "Your children?" I asked. "Yes. Michael, 16, Amy's 14, handful ages." She smiled. "But I assume you know something about that?" "I do. Or I did. I'm not sure what I know about Riley anymore. Sarah, she told me to call her." Sarah gestured to a chair. "Sit down. We need to talk about the credit card fraud case." I sat, folding my hands in my lap like I was in church. "I've been in contact with the fraud department at Capital One," Sarah said, pulling out a file. "They've confirmed that the card was opened using your information without your consent. The signatures on the applications and purchases don't match your handwriting. I compared them to your signature on the eviction notice. The charges total $47,328. 16, all made between February and July of this year." "Yes, that matches what I found." "The bank wants to know if you're filing a police report. If you do, they'll pursue criminal charges against whoever opened the card. If you don't, the debt becomes your responsibility." "I know." Sarah leaned forward. "Charlotte, I need to be clear with you. Based on everything you've told me and the evidence you've provided, your son Riley is almost certainly the one who committed this fraud. If you file a report, he will be arrested. He will be charged with identity theft and credit card fraud. Given the amount, over $45,000, he's looking at federal charges. That's 3 to 5 years in federal prison minimum." My hands tightened in my lap. "And if I don't file a report?" "Then you owe Capital One $47,000 plus accumulating interest. At your income level, Charlotte," she paused, and I could see the sympathy in her eyes, "you'd probably have to sell your house to pay it." The house. Always back to the house. The house I'd bled for. The house that represented every sacrifice, every missed meal, every worn-out shoe, every night. I'd worked until my hands cracked and bled. "There's a third option," I said quietly. "Oh." "My lawyer mentioned it. I could file the report but request that the court sentence Riley to restitution and probation instead of prison time. He'd have to pay back every cent, but he wouldn't go to jail if he complied." Sarah nodded slowly. "That's possible. For a first-time offender with family circumstances, a judge might agree to that. But, Charlotte, you need to understand, If Riley violates probation, if he misses payments or commits another crime, he goes to prison anyway. And restitution on $47,000, that would take him years. Probably 5 to 10 years of monthly payments. But the baby would have a father. Sarah's eyebrows went up. Baby, Taylor is pregnant 3 months along, Riley told me yesterday. Ah, Sarah sat back in her chair. That complicates things. It does. We sat in silence for a moment. I could hear phones ringing in other offices' voices in the hallway, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. What would you do? I asked. If it was your son? Sarah looked at the photo on her desk. I don't know. I'd like to think I'd do the right thing, but when it's your child, she shook her head. My son Michael got caught shoplifting last year. Stupid teenage stuff, a candy bar and some chips. The store called me instead of the police. I could have let it go, just paid for the items and taken him home, but I didn't. I made them call the police. Michael was arrested, processed the whole thing. He had to do community service and take a shoplifting prevention class. That must have been hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Watching them put my son in handcuffs, knowing I could have stopped it with one word. Her voice cracked slightly. But he needed to learn. Real consequences for real actions. And you know what? He's never stolen anything since. He got a part-time job and now he pays for his own stuff. He's more responsible than he was before. How old was he? 15. Riley is 42. Exactly. And he's never learned that lesson, has he? Someone has always protected him from consequences. I'm guessing that someone was you. I thought about all the times I'd covered for Riley, the homework I'd helped him with, sometimes doing more than helping, the college application essays I'd basically written for him, the time he'd dented someone's car in a parking lot, and I'd paid for the repairs without making him contribute. The loans I'd given him over the years that were never quite paid back. You're right, I said quietly. I've always protected him, always made things easier. I thought I was being a good mother, making sure he didn't struggle like I did. You were being a good mother, but maybe too good. Maybe he needed to struggle a little. I looked at Sarah. She was younger than me, probably in her mid-40s. But she was wise in a way I'd never quite managed to be. She'd learned to let her children fall so they could learn to get back up. I'd never let Riley fall, and now he didn't know how to stand on his own. I'm going to file the report, I said, and hearing the words out loud made them real. I'm going to request restitution and probation. But if he doesn't pay, if he runs again, then he goes to prison. Those will be the terms. Sarah nodded. I think that's fair. It gives him a chance to make this right. It's more than he deserves. Maybe. But it's what that baby deserves. A chance at having a father who learned to be responsible. She pulled out a form. This is the official police report for identity theft and credit card fraud. I'm going to need you to go through it carefully and sign at the bottom. Once you sign this, there's no taking it back. Riley will be arrested. My hand shook as I picked up the pen. 42 years. 42 years since I'd first held him red-faced and screaming in my arms at the hospital. 42 years of loving him, raising him, sacrificing for him. And now I was going to have him arrested. But what choice did I have? Let him steal from me and face no consequences. Lose my house to pay for his crimes. Teach that baby, my grandchild, that theft and lies were acceptable in our family. No. I signed the form. There's one more thing, Sarah said. Taylor, what do you want to do about her breaking and entering charge? I'd almost forgotten about Taylor in all this focus on Riley. What are my options? You can press charges. She'd probably face 6 months to a year in county jail plus fines. Or you can decline to press charges and we drop it. If she goes to jail, what happens to the baby? That's complicated. If she's convicted before the baby is born, she might serve her sentence in a facility that allows pregnant women. After the birth, it depends. Some facilities allow new mothers to keep their babies with them for a period of time, others don't. A baby in jail. My grandchild born in jail. I thought about Taylor, how much I disliked her, how she treated me, the entitled attitude, the insults, the way she'd looked down on me in my own home. But she was pregnant. With my grandchild. I won't press charges against Taylor, I said. Not right now, but I want a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of my house. That I can definitely do. Sarah made some notes on another form. Then she looked up at me. Charlotte, I have to ask, are you okay? Financially, emotionally, this is a lot to deal with. I'm fine. I've dealt with worse. I'm sure you have, but still, do you have support, friends, family? I thought about that question. Did I have support Mr. Henderson across the street who'd helped me move in 33 years ago? Mrs. Petrov, who brought me soup when I had the flu last winter? The ladies at the library where I worked part-time? James, my lawyer. I have enough, I said. I've always had enough. Riley was arrested on Wednesday morning. I know because Sarah called me at 10:07 a.m. to tell me. We picked him up at LAX, she said. He was flying back from California. He's being processed now. How was he? Scared, angry. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you filed the report, that you're requesting restitution instead of prison time, that he has a chance to make this right if he chooses to take it. What did he say? He said you betrayed him. Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Betrayed him. I'd raised him alone, worked myself to the bone for him, given him everything I had. And when he stole from me, when I held him accountable, that was betrayal. Charlotte, are you still there? I'm here. Thank you for letting me know. His arraignment is Friday at 2 p.m. You can attend if you want, or not. It's up to you. I'll think about it. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for Riley over the years, where I'd packed his school lunches every morning, where I'd taught him to make scrambled eggs when he was 10, and I let myself feel it. The grief, the anger, the sadness. He thought I'd betrayed him. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered it anyway. Mrs. Hayes. A woman's voice, young and scared. Yes. This is Taylor. Please don't hang up. I should have hung up. I told myself I wouldn't talk to her, but something in her voice, the fear, the desperation made me stay on the line. What do you want, Taylor? They arrested Riley. Did you know? Her voice cracked. Did you have him arrested? I reported the credit card fraud to the police. Yes. How could you? He's your son. He made a mistake, but you're going to send him to prison. Riley committed a federal crime. He stole $47,000 from me. Those are the consequences. But the baby... Now, she was crying. What about the baby? How am I supposed to raise a baby alone while Riley's in prison? Riley isn't going to prison if he does what he's supposed to do. The court is going to offer him restitution and probation. He has to pay back every cent he stole and he has to stay out of trouble. If he does that, he can be there for the baby. Pay back $47,000. How he doesn't even have a job. Then he needs to get one, a real one, and keep it and work hard like I did for 40 years to buy the house you tried to steal from me. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, I'm sorry. I almost dropped the phone, Taylor apologizing. Taylor, who'd never apologized for anything in the 8 months she lived in my house. What did you say? I said, I'm sorry for everything, for how I treated you, for trying to break into your house, for spending that money. You're right, I'm entitled. I've always been entitled. My parents gave me everything, and then I met Riley and he gave me everything, and I expected it. From everyone. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm scared. I'm 3 months pregnant, Mrs. Hayes. My husband just got arrested. I don't have a job. I don't have any money. It turns out most of our savings was loans from you that I didn't know about. I'm staying with my sister in New Jersey, but I can't stay here forever. And I don't know what to do. I should have felt satisfaction hearing her scared and desperate. After everything she'd done, she deserved to be scared. But all I felt was tired. What do you want from me, Taylor? I don't know. Advice, help, forgiveness. I don't know how to do this, how to be poor, how to struggle. I've never had to. Well, now you're learning. I know, and I deserve this. I know I do. But the baby, her voice broke completely now. The baby doesn't deserve this, and I don't know how to give this baby what it needs. I closed my eyes. The baby. Always back to the baby, my grandchild who hadn't asked to be born into this mess. Taylor, I'm going to tell you what I learned when Riley was born and his father left me. Are you listening? Yes. You learn to do what you have to do. You get a job, any job. You work hard, you sacrifice. You put the baby's needs before your own wants. You learn the difference between needs and wants. You learn to be grateful for what you have. Instead of angry about what you don't have, you grow up. But I don't know how. Nobody knows how at first. But you figure it out because you have to. Because there's a child depending on you. That's what being a parent means. More silence. Then, did you ever regret it? Having Riley doing it alone? Did I regret having Riley? I thought about that question, about the sleepless nights, the exhaustion, the poverty, the struggle, about missing out on dating, on friends, on fun, on everything young women in their 20s and 30s were supposed to enjoy. About the joy of his first word, his first step, his first day of school, his graduation, watching him grow into a man. No, I said honestly. I never regretted having him. I regretted some of the choices I made, raising him. I regretted maybe protecting him too much, not letting him struggle enough. But I never regretted him. I'm scared I won't be a good mother. Being scared means you care. That's a start. Will you? She hesitated. When the baby is born, will you want to meet them, even after everything? Could I separate the baby from the parents? Could I love a grandchild while still being angry at my son and his wife? I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me again after the baby is born. Okay? She paused. Mrs. Hayes? Yes. Thank you for not pressing charges against me. Detective Chen told me you could have sent me to jail too, but you didn't. I didn't do it for you. I did it for the baby. Children need their mothers. I know, but still, thank you. After we hung up, I sat with my cold coffee and thought about everything that had happened in the last 3 days. Sunday morning seemed like a lifetime ago. My phone buzzed with a text. Mr. Henderson. Charlotte, a bunch of us neighbors want to take you to dinner Friday night, our treat. You've had a rough week. I smiled. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I did have enough support. I texted back. That would be lovely. Thank you. Another text, this one from James. Riley's arraignment is Friday at 2 p.m. Do you want me to be there with you? Did I want to go? Did I want to see my son in handcuffs standing in front of a judge? Yes, I did. Because this was real. This was happening. And running from it, pretending it wasn't happening, that's what Riley would do. I wasn't Riley. I texted back, yes, please, I'll meet you there. Friday came faster than I expected. I put on my best dress, navy blue, the one I wore to wedding and funerals. I put on makeup, which I rarely did anymore. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a mother going to watch her son be arraigned for fraud. Because that's what I was. James met me outside the courthouse at 1:45 p.m. Are you ready for this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Maybe 20 seats in the gallery, a judge's bench at the front, 2 tables for lawyers, a door to the side where prisoners were brought in. We sat in the back row. I didn't want to be too close, didn't want Riley to see me right away. At exactly 2:00 p.m., the bailiff called the court to order. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison was a black woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She sat down and looked at the docket. Case number CR 2024-0884. United States versus Riley Marcus Hayes. Identity theft and credit card fraud. Is the defendant present? The side door opened. Riley walked in. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed in front of him. His hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept. He looked smaller, somehow diminished. He looked scared. His eyes scanned the courtroom and found me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he looked away. A public defender stood up. Your Honor, John Mitchell, representing Mr. Hayes. We're here for arraignment. Very well, Mr. Hayes. You're charged with 1 count of identity theft and 5 counts of credit card fraud, all felonies. Do you understand these charges? Riley's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. How do you plead? Riley looked at his lawyer, who nodded. Guilty, Your Honor. A guilty plea. He wasn't going to fight it. Maybe that was something. Maybe that meant he was finally ready to face what he'd done. Mr. Mitchell, I understand there's a request from the victim for an alternative sentencing arrangement. Yes, Your Honor. The victim, Charlotte Hayes, the defendant's mother, has requested that the court consider restitution and probation instead of incarceration. She's willing to work with the defendant to establish a payment plan. Judge Morrison looked up at that. Her eyes found me in the back of the courtroom. Mrs. Hayes, would you please stand? My legs felt weak, but I stood. Mrs. Hayes, you're the victim in this case? Yes, Your Honor. And you're requesting leniency for your son? Not leniency, Your Honor. Accountability. I'm requesting that he be required to pay back every cent he stole with interest. But I don't want him in prison. He's going to be a father. That baby deserves a chance at having a responsible father. I see. Mr. Hayes, did you hear what your mother just said? Riley nodded his head down. Look at me, Mr. Hayes. He looked up at the judge. Your mother, the woman you stole $47,000 from, is standing in this courtroom asking me not to send you to prison. She's offering you a chance that most people in your position don't get. Do you understand how fortunate you are? Yes, Your Honor. His voice cracked. Do you deserve this chance? Silence. Then quietly, no, Your Honor. I don't. No, you don't. But your mother seems to think you might become someone who does deserve it. I'm inclined to agree with her. Here's what's going to happen. Judge Morrison looked down at her papers. I'm sentencing you to 5 years of supervised probation. During that time, you will make monthly restitution payments to Mrs. Hayes in the amount of $850 per month until the full amount of $47,000, $328 plus 6% annual interest is paid in full. You will obtain and maintain full-time employment. You will submit to random drug tests. You will meet with your probation officer weekly for the first year, then monthly thereafter. You will not leave the state without permission. And Mr. Hayes. Yes, Your Honor. If you miss even one payment, if you violate probation in any way, you will serve the maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Do you accept these terms? Riley looked at his lawyer, who nodded. Then he looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since he'd walked in. Yes, Your Honor, I accept. Very well. Probation starts immediately. You'll be released today and report to the probation office Monday morning at 9 a.m. Don't be late. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was done. Riley was led out through the side door. Before he disappeared, he looked back at me one more time. I couldn't read his expression. Anger, gratitude, shame, maybe all three. James touched my arm. You did the right thing, Charlotte. Did I? Or did I just enable him one more time? You gave him consequences with a path forward. That's not enabling, that's love. We left the courtroom. Outside, the November air was cold and sharp. Fall was turning into winter. Everything was dying, getting ready to be reborn in spring. Maybe Riley would be reborn too. Maybe this would be the thing that finally changed him. Or maybe he'd fail. Maybe he'd miss payments, violate probation, end up in prison anyway. Only time would tell. That Friday night, Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Petrov, and 4 other neighbors took me to Carrabba's Italian Grill. They insisted on paying. They asked how I was doing. They told me I was brave. They said I'd done the right thing. I let them believe I felt brave. I didn't tell them that mostly I felt sad. Saturday, I worked in my garden. The tomatoes were done for the season, but I planted bulbs for spring, tulips and daffodils, something to look forward to. Sunday, I went to church. I hadn't been in weeks. The situation with Riley and Taylor had consumed all my energy. But I went and I sat in my usual pew and I prayed. Not for Riley to be forgiven, not for Taylor to change, not for everything to magically get better. I prayed for strength, for wisdom, for peace. And for that baby, my grandchild, who would be born into this complicated, messy, broken family in 6 months. After church, Mrs. Patterson, who'd been teaching Sunday school since before I moved to the neighborhood, came up to me. Charlotte, I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. Thank you. If you need anything, prayer company, a casserole, she smiled. You let me know? I will, thank you. As I drove home, I thought about community, how I'd built a life here over 33 years, how these people, these neighbors had become my family in ways Riley never quite understood. When I pulled into my driveway, there was a car I didn't recognize parked on the street. A rental car from the look of the plates. And sitting on my front porch looking smaller and more tired than I'd ever seen him was my son. He stood up when I got out of my car. We looked at each other across the lawn. "Hi, Mom." "Riley." "Can we talk?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him to leave, that he wasn't welcome, that I'd given him more than he deserved, and I didn't owe him anything else. But he was my son. And maybe James was right. Maybe this was love, not letting him off the hook, but giving him a chance to climb back up. "We can talk," I said. "On the porch." "You're not coming inside?" "Okay." I walked up the steps Tom had repaired. I sat in the chair I'd bought at a garage sale 20 years ago. Riley sat on the top step, keeping his distance. "I don't know where to start," he said. "Start with the truth. For once." He flinched, but nodded. "I lost my job in February. Not budget cuts like I told you. I was fired for padding my expense reports. Basically, for stealing from the company." "So stealing from me wasn't your first time?" "No, it wasn't." He looked down at his hands. "Taylor didn't know at first. I hid it from her for a month. Pretended I was still going to work, but eventually she figured it out, and instead of being angry, she just started planning." "Planning what?" "Planning how to survive. She's not good at much, Mom, but she's good at figuring out angles. She said we should move in with you temporarily. Use your money while we figure things out. When I said you didn't have much money, she said we'd find it. And when I found your document in your desk, it was her idea to open the credit card." "But you did it." "Yes, I did it. I'm not blaming her. I made the choice." We sat in silence. A car drove by. Mr. Henderson waved from across the street. "The judge said you're going to be a father." "Yeah, 6 months." He looked up at me. "I'm terrified, Mom." "You should be. Being a parent is terrifying." "How did you do it alone?" I thought about that question. How had I done it? I didn't have a choice. Your father left. It was do it alone or give up. And I wasn't going to give you up. Did you ever think about it? Giving me up? Once. I said honestly, you were 2 years old. I was so tired I could barely stand. The electricity had been shut off because I couldn't pay the bill. It was winter and the apartment was freezing. You were crying because you were cold and hungry and scared. And I thought maybe you'd be better off with someone else, someone who could give you more. But you didn't. No, because I realized that what you needed most wasn't money or a warm house. What you needed most was someone who loved you enough to keep trying. So that's what I did. I kept trying. Riley was crying now, silent tears running down his face. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for stealing from you, for how Taylor treated you, for not standing up for you, for being weak, for being such a disappointment." I looked at my son, really looked at him. He'd been handsome once, successful looking, confident. Now he just looked broken. Maybe broken was where he needed to be. Maybe you had to break completely before you could rebuild yourself into something stronger. "Riley, I'm going to tell you something and I need you to really hear it. Okay? I love you. I will always love you because you're my son. But I don't like who you've become. I don't like the man who steals from his mother. I don't like the man who lets his wife disrespect his family. I don't like the man who runs away when things get hard." He nodded, not arguing. "But," I continued, "I believe you can become someone better, someone I could like again, someone your child could be proud of. That's why I gave you this chance. Not because you deserve it, but because I believe you're capable of deserving it eventually." "What if I fail?" Then you go to prison and your child grows up without you. Those are the stakes. You need to decide if you're willing to risk that. I'm not. He wiped his eyes. I'm not willing to risk that. I'm going to make every payment, Mom. I'm going to do everything the judge said. I'm going to be different. Words are easy, Riley. Show me with actions. I will. I already have a job interview Monday, warehouse work night shift. It doesn't pay much, but it's a start. Good. And I'm going to therapy. Taylor and I both are. We can't afford much, but there's a sliding scale clinic that will see us. Also good. He stood up. I should go. I needed to see you, to tell you I'm sorry in person. I stood too. We faced each other on my porch in front of the house I'd built. Riley, yeah. Don't come back here unless you're invited. This is my home, my sanctuary. When you've proven yourself, when you've made at least 6 months of payments without missing one, when you've shown me that you're really changing, then we can talk about you visiting again. He nodded. I understand. But send me pictures of the ultrasounds, of the baby when it's born. That's my grandchild. I want to know them even if I can't know you right now. I will, I promise. He walked to his rental car. Before he got in, he turned back. Mom, thank you for giving me this chance. I won't waste it. See that you don't? I watched him drive away. Then I went inside my house, my clean, quiet, peaceful house, and closed the door. And for the first time in 8 months, I felt like I could breathe. May came with sunshine and the smell of fresh cut grass. I was in my garden, kneeling on the foam pad Mrs. Petrov had given me for my birthday. For your niece, Charlotte, you're not 20 anymore. Planting tomatoes. The same tomatoes I planted every spring. The same ritual I'd performed for 33 years in this yard. But this spring felt different, lighter somehow. Riley had made every single payment, 6 months, 6 payments of $850 each. Every month on the first, like clockwork, the money appeared in my account. He'd send me a text with each payment sent. All good here, not chatty, not asking for forgiveness or recognition, just the facts. Just proving slowly that he was keeping his word. He'd also sent pictures, ultrasound images, grainy black and white photos where I could barely make out what was supposed to be a baby, but I stared at them anyway. My grandchild. A girl. They were having a girl. Taylor had sent a few texts too. Updates about doctor appointments, about how the pregnancy was going. The texts were polite, almost formal. Doctor says baby is healthy. Due date is May 15th. We'll let you know when she arrives. No requests for money, no manipulation, just information. I didn't know if they'd really changed or if they were just performing for me, proving they deserved my forgiveness. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the performance itself was the change. My phone rang. I pulled off my gardening gloves and saw Riley's number. Hello? Mom? His voice was breathless, excited, terrified. It's happening. Taylor's in labor. We're at County General. The baby's coming. My heart jumped. How is she? How's Taylor? She's okay. Scared but okay. The doctor says it'll be a few more hours. I wanted you to know. Thank you for calling. Silence. Then, would you want to come to the hospital? You don't have to. I know we haven't earned that, but I thought, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and stood there in my garden dirt on my knees, the sun warm on my face. I was going to meet my grandchild today. After everything, the theft, the betrayal, the court case, The 6 months of silence I was going to hold Riley's daughter. I went inside and changed quickly, washed my hands and face, put on clean clothes, a comfortable cotton dress, and my good cardigan. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a grandmother. When had that happened? The drive to County General took 18 minutes. I'd been to this hospital before when Riley was 8 and broke his arm falling off his bike, when I'd had pneumonia at 63 for various other emergencies over the years. But today felt different. Today, I was going for something joyful. The maternity ward was on the 3rd floor. The walls were painted soft yellow and decorated with pictures of babies. A nurse at the desk looked up when I approached. "I'm here to see Taylor Hayes. She's in labor. I'm the baby's grandmother." The nurse smiled. "Room 312. Down the hall, last door on the right. But check with family before you go in. She might be in active labor." I walked down that hallway slowly. My heart was pounding. What if Riley had changed his mind? What if Taylor didn't want me there? What if I got to that room and they turned me away? But when I reached room 312, the door was cracked open. I could hear voices inside. I knocked gently. "Come in," Riley called. I pushed the door open. Taylor was in the hospital bed, her face flushed and sweaty, her hair pulled back. She was wearing a hospital gown and had monitors strapped to her belly. She looked young and scared, and nothing like the confident, entitled woman who tried to break into my house 6 months ago. Riley was beside the bed holding her hand. He'd gained a little weight, the good kind, the kind that comes from regular meals and less stress. His hair was shorter, neater. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt that said "Dad Loading" with a progress bar underneath. They both looked up when I walked in. "Mom," Riley said, and his voice cracked. "You came." "Of course I came." Taylor tried to sit up straighter but winced. "Mrs. Hayes, thank you for coming. I know we don't deserve—" She gasped and grabbed Riley's hand. Oh no, another contraction." I watched her breathe through it, panting, squeezing Riley's hand so hard his fingers turned white. Riley coached her through it. "Breathe, baby. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're doing great." When it passed, Taylor collapsed back on the pillows. "I hate this. I hate everything about this." "I know," Riley said gently, "but it'll be worth it." I walked closer to the bed. "How far apart are the contractions?" "About 5 minutes," Taylor said. "They said I'm at 7 centimeters. They think another hour or 2. I nodded. I remembered this. The pain, the exhaustion, the fear. I'd done this alone, no husband, no mother, just a nurse who checked on me every 30 minutes. Riley's birth had taken 14 hours. I thought I was going to die. "Can I get you anything? Ice chips? Water?" "There's a cafeteria downstairs," Riley said. "Could you maybe get me a coffee? I've been here since 5 this morning and I'm running on fumes." "Of course." I took the elevator down to the 1st floor. The cafeteria was small but clean, with the smell of coffee and antiseptic. I ordered a large coffee for Riley and a tea for myself. While I waited, I thought about what was happening upstairs. A baby was being born. My granddaughter. A new life coming into this messy, complicated family. What kind of life would she have? Would Riley stay sober, stay employed, keep making those payments? Would Taylor continue the therapy, continue trying to be less entitled? Would they be good parents? I didn't know. Nobody knows what kind of parents they'll be until they're in it. But I knew one thing, that baby would be loved. Whatever else happened, she would be loved. I took the coffee back upstairs. When I walked into the room, Taylor was in the middle of another contraction. This one seemed worse. She was making a low animal sound of pain. "That's it." The nurse, a different one now younger, was saying, "You're doing great. Just breathe through it." When it passed, Taylor looked at Riley with tears in her eyes. "I can't do this. It hurts too much. I want the epidural. Please." "The anesthesiologist is on his way," the nurse said. "Should be here in about 15 minutes. Taylor started crying. 15 minutes? I can't wait 15 minutes. "Yes, you can," I heard myself say. I walked to the other side of the bed across from Riley. "You can do hard things. I know you can." Taylor looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "How do you know?" "Because you're still here. 6 months ago you were spoiled and entitled and couldn't imagine doing anything hard. But you didn't run away. You stayed. You went to therapy. You got a job. Riley told me you're working from home, doing bookkeeping now. You're doing hard things already." "That's different than this." "No, it's not. Pain is pain. Hard is hard. You just breathe through it and survive it and come out the other side." Another contraction hit. Taylor grabbed my hand this time, not Riley's. Her grip was crushing. I didn't pull away. "That's it," I said softly. "Breathe. In and out. You're not dying, even though it feels like it. You're bringing life. That's what we do." The contraction passed. Taylor looked at me with something like wonder. "You did this alone." "I did." "I don't know how." "Because I had to, same as you're doing now." The anesthesiologist arrived 20 minutes later. After the epidural kicked in, Taylor visibly relaxed. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it became manageable. "Thank God," she breathed. "I can think again." Riley brought me a chair. We sat there, the three of us, waiting for the baby to decide she was ready. Riley and Taylor talked about names. They'd narrowed it down to Emma or Sophie. They talked about the nursery they'd set up in their small apartment. Riley had painted it yellow and white. They talked about their plans. Riley's job at the warehouse had turned into a supervisor position. Better pay day shift instead of nights. Taylor's bookkeeping was bringing in money too, not a lot, but enough to help. "We're making it work," Riley said, looking at me. "It's hard. We're still living paycheck to paycheck. But we're making it work." "I'm proud of you," I said, and I meant it. His eyes got wet. Yeah. At 4:37 p.m., the doctor came in to check Taylor. "You're at 10 centimeters, it's time to push." What happened next was chaos. Organized chaos, but chaos. Nurses appeared, equipment was moved, the bottom half of the bed was removed, Taylor's legs were put in stirrups. "Should I leave?" I asked. "No." Taylor grabbed my hand again. "Stay, please, I need you both here." So I stayed. I held Taylor's hand while Riley held the other one. I watched my daughter-in-law push and scream and cry and curse. I watched my son coach her through it, telling her she was strong, she was amazing, she could do this. And at 5:03 p.m. on May 15th, with the late afternoon sun streaming through the window, Emma Rose Hayes was born. They put her on Taylor's chest immediately. She was tiny, red-faced, screaming her head off. Perfect. "Oh my God," Taylor was sobbing. "Oh my God, she's real. She's really here." Riley was crying 2 big, gasping sobs. "We made that. We made a whole person." I stood back, giving them space for this moment that belonged to them. But then Riley looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. "Mom, come here, come meet your granddaughter." I walked closer. Taylor looked at me, really looked at me and said, "Do you want to hold her?" "Are you sure?" "Yes, please." They placed Emma in my arms. She was so light, barely 6 pounds. She had Riley's nose and Taylor's chin. Her eyes were squeezed shut. Her tiny hand curled around my finger when I touched it. "Hello, Emma," I whispered. "I'm your grandma. I'm so happy to meet you." She stopped crying. Just for a moment, like she recognized my voice somehow, like she knew who I was. And standing there holding my granddaughter while my son and his wife watched, I felt something shift inside me. The anger I'd been carrying for 6 months, it didn't disappear, but it got smaller. Less important, this baby, this innocent, perfect baby, she was what mattered now. Giving her a better start than Riley had. Making sure she grew up knowing she was loved. Making sure the cycle stopped here. "She's beautiful," I said, and my voice was thick with tears. "Absolutely beautiful." They kept Taylor and Emma in the hospital for 2 days. I visited both days, bringing food for Riley. Real food, not cafeteria food, and magazines for Taylor. I held Emma while Taylor napped. I watched Riley change his first diaper, fumbling and nervous, but determined to get it right. On the second day, while Taylor was sleeping, and Riley had gone to get coffee, I sat in the chair by the window with Emma in my arms. She was awake, her dark eyes trying to focus on my face. "You're going to have a complicated family," I told her softly. "Your dad made some big mistakes. Your mom did too, and me, I'm still figuring out how to forgive them. But here's what I promise you," Emma rose. "I promise to always tell you the truth. I promise to be here when you need me. And I promise to teach you that actions have consequences, but people can change if they really try." Emma yawned, a tiny, perfect yawn. Then she fell asleep in my arms. When they were discharged, Riley and Taylor took Emma home to their apartment, a small 2-bedroom place about 20 minutes from my house. Riley had asked if I wanted to come to see it, but I'd said no, not yet. They needed time to figure out being parents first, but I asked them to bring Emma to visit in a week. "I want her to see the garden," I said. "The tomatoes are coming in nice this year." A week later, on a Sunday afternoon, Riley pulled into my driveway. Taylor was in the passenger seat. Emma was in a car seat in the back, sleeping peacefully. I watched from my porch as Riley carefully removed the car seat, making sure not to wake her, and carried her toward the house. Taylor followed, carrying a diaper bag that looked comically large. "Hi, Mom," Riley said. "Thanks for inviting us." "Of course, come in." It felt strange letting them into my house after 6 months. The last time they'd been here, they'd been living here, taking over, treating it like their own. Now, they were guests again, the way it should be. We sat in the living room, me in Marcus's old chair that I'd bought back from Goodwill 2 months ago, Riley and Taylor on the couch. Emma's car seat was between us on the coffee table. She was starting to wake up, making little squeaking noises. "Can I asked, reaching for her. "Please," Taylor said. I lifted Emma out and cradled her. She was bigger, already had gained weight. She looked healthy and content. "How's it going?" I asked. "Really?" Riley and Taylor exchanged a glance. "Hard," Riley admitted. "She doesn't sleep much. We're exhausted all the time. I'm not sure I've slept more than 3 hours straight in a week. That's normal. It gets easier around 3 months." 3 months. Taylor looked horrified. I have to do this for 3 more months. At least 3 months, maybe longer. Taylor groaned. Nobody tells you it's going to be this hard. If they did, nobody would have babies. We talked for an hour about Emma's feeding schedule, about the pediatrician appointments, about how Riley was balancing work and helping with the baby, about how Taylor was trying to do bookkeeping while caring for an infant and how impossible that felt. I used to think I was busy, Taylor said, when I was working at the gallery and going to yoga and meeting friends for brunch, but that was nothing. This is... She looked at Emma and her expression softened. This is everything. All day, every day, she needs something. And I'm so tired I could cry. But then she smiles at me. They say it's just gas, but I swear she's smiling and nothing else matters. That's being a mother, I said. How did you do this alone? Taylor asked. Every time I think I can handle it, Riley is there to take her so I can shower or sleep. I can't imagine doing this completely alone. You do what you have to do. You don't have a choice, so you find a way. Riley had been quiet just watching me hold Emma. Now he spoke up. Mom, I've been thinking a lot these past few months about how hard it was for you, raising me alone, working 2 jobs. I never really appreciated it before. I knew it intellectually, but I didn't feel it. Now I feel it. Good. You should feel it. I'm sorry for taking it for granted, for taking you for granted, for everything. I looked at my son. He meant it. I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't manipulation or performance. This was real remorse. I know you are, I said, and I appreciate the apology. But, Riley, I don't need you to be sorry. I need you to be better for her. I looked down at Emma. She deserves parents who are better than we were. We're trying, Taylor said. Every day we're trying. I know, I can see that. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Emma had fallen back asleep in my arms, her tiny hand curled against my chest. Mom, Riley said carefully, I know we haven't earned this yet, but maybe once a month or so we could bring Emma to visit. Let you spend time with her. Once a month, not moving back in, not assuming they were welcome whenever. Once a month, scheduled, respectful. I'd like that, I said. But Riley Taylor, I need to be clear about something. This is my home. You're welcome here as my guests. But if you ever try to take advantage again, if you ever disrespect me or this house again, that's it. No second chances, no more forgiveness. You're done. Do you understand? Yes, they said in unison. Good. Then yes, bring Emma once a month. Let's make it the last Sunday of every month. Come for lunch. I'll cook. We'll spend time together as a family. Riley's eyes got wet again. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me. Just keep making those payments. Keep going to therapy. Keep being good parents. Show me through your actions that you've changed. We will. They left an hour later. I stood on my porch and watched them drive away. Riley driving carefully, Taylor checking on Emma in the back seat. A family. Imperfect, complicated, still healing. But a family. I went back inside and cleaned up the few dishes we'd used. Then I walked through my house room by room. The living room where I'd scattered those bloody towels 6 months ago. Clean now, peaceful. The kitchen where I'd mixed ketchup and food coloring in the dark hours before dawn. Bright now, full of light. Riley's old bedroom empty again. I turned it into a sewing room, something I'd always wanted but never had space for. My space now, my choice. My bedroom where I slept alone every night. the same bed I'd slept in for 33 years. The same quilt my mother had made me before she died. This house, my house, the house I'd built with 35 years of sacrifice and sweat and tears. It was mine. Completely, entirely, unquestionably mine. And I defended it. Not just with fake blood and a clever plan, but with boundaries, with consequences, with the courage to let my son face what he'd done and the grace to give him a path forward. I walked out to my garden. The tomatoes were ripening, red and full and perfect. I picked one warm from the sun and bit into it right there in the garden. Juice ran down my chin. It tasted like summer, like home, like victory. My phone buzzed. A text from Riley. Made it home safe. Emma fell asleep in the car. Thanks for today, Mom. Really. Same time next month. I texted back. Same time next month. Drive safe. Another text, this one from Mr. Henderson. Saw your visitors. The baby is beautiful. Congratulations, Grandma. I smiled. Grandma? I was a grandma now. That was a new chapter. A new beginning. I sat down on my porch steps, the steps Tom had repaired, the steps where Taylor had stood 6 months ago demanding entry to a house that wasn't hers. I looked out at my street, my neighborhood, my world. 68 years old, most of my life behind me. But maybe, just maybe, the best parts were still ahead. I thought about Emma growing up, coming to visit her grandma once a month, playing in this garden, learning to plant tomatoes, hearing stories about her father when he was young. I thought about Riley making his payments going to work being a father, maybe becoming the man I'd always hoped he could be. I thought about Taylor learning to be less entitled, learning to work hard, learning to sacrifice. Maybe becoming a better person through the struggle. And I thought about myself, Charlotte Hayes, survivor, fighter, mother, grandmother, owner of this house, defender of this home. I'd won, not because I was cruel or vengeful, but because I'd stood my ground, because I'd refused to be pushed out of the space I'd built, because I'd demanded respect and enforced consequences when I didn't get it. The sun was setting, painting my street in gold and orange. It was beautiful, peaceful, mine. I went inside and locked my door. The door Tom had fixed, the door with its reinforced frame and new locks, the door that no one would break through again. I made myself dinner, just for one. The way I'd done for years before Riley and Taylor moved in. The way I'd probably do for the rest of my life. And I was content, because this house, this beautiful, hard-won, blood-bought house, was mine. And no one, not my son, not his wife, not anyone, would ever take it from me again. I'd made sure of that. It was Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years I was hosting. Not a big gathering, I'd learned my lesson about that. Just Riley, Taylor, and Emma. Simple, manageable, boundaried. Riley arrived at noon carrying Emma, who was now 7 months old and babbling constantly. Taylor followed with dishes they'd contributed to the meal this year. A sweet potato casserole and a pumpkin pie from the bakery. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom," Riley said, kissing my cheek. It felt natural now, these small affections. We'd rebuilt slowly, carefully, over 12 months of monthly visits. Riley had made every single payment, 12 payments of $850. $10,200 paid back so far. Only $37,000 left to go. At this rate, he'd be done in 4 more years. 4 years. He'd be 46. Emma would be in kindergarten. Maybe they'd have another child by then. Maybe not. But they'd have their life back, free of this debt. "Happy Thanksgiving," I replied. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." We ate in my dining room around the table I'd bought at a garage sale 30 years ago. Emma sat in a high chair Riley had brought, smashing sweet potatoes into her face and laughing. The mess didn't bother me like it might have once. She was a baby. Babies were messy. That was okay. After dinner, while Taylor cleaned Emma up and Riley did the dishes he'd insisted, saying I'd done the cooking, I stood at my kitchen window and looked out at my garden. The tomatoes were done for the season, the plants brown and withered, but the bulbs I'd planted last fall had come up beautifully in the spring. Tulips and daffodils, bright and cheerful, they'd bloom again next year, and the year after. Cycles of death and rebirth. "Mom," Riley came to stand beside me. "You okay?" "I'm fine, just thinking." "About what?" "About how far we've come. A year ago, you'd just been arrested. Now you're here having Thanksgiving dinner with your daughter. Things change." "They do." He was quiet for a moment. "I'll never be able to repay you. Not just the money, but everything. I don't need repayment. I need you to break the cycle. Be a better father than your father was. Teach Emma better than I taught you. That's how you repay me." "I'm trying." "I know. And you're succeeding." He hugged me, then a real hug, the kind we hadn't shared in years. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, Riley." Taylor appeared in the doorway holding Emma. "Sorry to interrupt, but someone wants her grandma." I took Emma and she immediately grabbed my glasses and tried to pull them off my face. I laughed. "You're trouble, aren't you?" Emma gurgled happily, not understanding the words, but understanding the love behind them. We spent the rest of the afternoon in my living room. Riley showed me pictures on his phone of Emma's first Halloween. They dressed her as a pumpkin. Taylor talked about getting a promotion at the bookkeeping company, more hours and better pay. They talked about maybe looking for a bigger apartment next year, something with a small yard for Emma. They were building a life, slowly, paycheck to paycheck, but they were building it. At 5 p.m., they packed up to leave. Emma was tired, getting fussy. Time for them to go home, start their bedtime routine. "Same time next month?" Riley asked at the door. "Same time next month, last Sunday, lunch at noon. We'll be here." I watched them load Emma into her car seat, watched them drive away, waving as they turned the corner. Then I went back inside my house. My quiet, peaceful house. I locked the door, those good strong locks that no one would break through. I walked through my room's rooms that held 33 years of memories, both good and bad. I sat in my chair, Marcos's old chair bought back from Goodwill, repaired and reupholstered. And I thought about what Mr. Henderson had said to me last week, sitting on his porch. "You know, Charlotte, you taught this whole neighborhood something important. You taught us that being kind doesn't mean being weak, that love can have boundaries, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable." Maybe he was right. Maybe that was the lesson. Not that I'd defeated Taylor with fake blood, not that I'd had Riley arrested, but that I'd loved him enough to let him face consequences, that I'd believed in him enough to give him a path to redemption. The house was quiet now, just me and the ticking clock and the hum of the refrigerator. This house, my house, The house I built with 35 years of sacrifice. The house I defended with ketchup and courage. The house I kept with boundaries and love. It was mine. It would always be mine. And when I died, whenever that day came, it would go to Emma. Not to Riley, not to Taylor. To Emma, my granddaughter, with a stipulation in my will that it couldn't be sold until she turned 25. Maybe she'd live in it, maybe she'd sell it, but she'd own it completely, no one else's name on the deed, just like I had. A house of her own, something to build a life on. That was my legacy. Not money, not possession, but the knowledge that a woman, even one who starts with nothing, can build something that no one can take away, as long as she's willing to fight for it. I'd fought for mine, and I'd won.